The streaming giant currently known as Netflix has been widely believed to be missing the mark more often than hitting it these past few years. After the decline of their giant series, Stranger Things, and likely due to the fact that the seasons have so much production time in between them that most of the once tween cast is now married and ready to have like children of their own. They're well into their adulthood and they clearly don't want to do that anymore. They tried their best to garner a little bit more success with their next giant pile of money, Bridgerton. And it worked for a second. I don't think that Bridgerton has the same type of viewership or amount of views as Stranger Things. Stranger Things was very clearly a phenomenon of the 2010s, and it's very unlikely to be recreated. But Bridgerton tried their best, and then it failed miserably as the costuming started to get more and more crazy and the acting was just taking turns that we didn't expect. The story is not that interesting, although I am incredibly biased to say this because Bridgerton was not made for the likes of me in mind, right? Like, it was made for a completely different audience than the traditional historical drama appreciator. I think it genuinely is period dramas for people who don't like period dramas. So after the first season was very, very successful, the second season was less so successful, and I do believe that it was mainly because there was a woman of color in the romantic lead that most people just didn't relate to it enough to watch it, which is absolute bullshit, by the way. I didn't finish the second season. I watched it maybe 3 episodes and then I just gave up. It just wasn't for me. And I tried again with the third season. I watched the entire first part, but mostly because I love Nicole Coughlan, and I just couldn't. I didn't finish it. I didn't watch the second part. I just watched the reviews, and the reviews were not favorable. So clearly Bridgerton was not for me. I have read the first book. I didn't like it. The rape scene really threw me for a loop, and it is about that part in the first season where I stopped watching the series because I completely forgot that was the book. That because I had read 2 books at the same time. I read Bridgerton and I read another period drama novel at the same time, and they were both like series. They were both like long series, and I forgot which one Bridgerton was. So then I was watching the show and I remembered that it was the one book in my life that I DNF'd. The one book, it was that one. Because once the rape scene arrived, I just couldn't finish it. I couldn't bother. I was just so shocked and kind of grossed out that I couldn't make myself finish it. But anyway, regardless of all of this, a recent sitcom by the streaming giant has gained a little bit of attention by a lot of viewers like myself, and perhaps may even sway some people's opinions on the decline of Netflix, and hopefully usher in a new era of art for the streaming platform, because I do have belief that Netflix can pick itself up from the ground if it knows where to invest its money. So let's talk about North of North. North of North hails all the way from Canada and is the baby of Inuk creators Stacey Aglock MacDonald, a film and television producer from Nunavut, Prince of Wales Island, which is the place where the fictional town in the series is based on, and Alethea Arnacook-Barrell, a filmmaker known from her work on Inuit life and culture, owner of Unicat Studios, a production company focused on producing Inuit films, and all of this to say that this was clearly made by people who actually know what they're doing when talking about Indigenous culture. Totaling 8 episodes, not nearly enough to satiate my hunger. By the way, I really miss when sitcoms were 20, 18 to 20, maybe even 22 episodes long, and this one really deserved those 22 episodes. I feel like they could have developed the story so much more. This quick to binge series tells the story of Siaya, played by the drop-dead gorgeous Anna Lambay, who is my age, and that hurt my feelings to find out, by the way. She's from 2000, we're both from 2000. That doesn't make logical sense to me. So Siaya is a young Inuk woman who married straight out of high school, had a daughter, and has dedicated the past 8 years of her life to caring for her family as wife and homemaker. Everything changes, however, when, after she's confronted by the fact that she wishes to have a more independent life and career, she ends up ruining her marriage and causing a scene in public. at an event, and she earns a very big target on her back from her traditionalist, tiny Arctic community. The series is a glorious, funny, and relatable exploration of womanhood, self-love, and building community, as well as a first of its kind in portraying the lives of Inuit as main characters with ups and downs, flaws and qualities, raw and human, just like everyone else, without imprisoning them in stereotypical roles of wisdom or victimhood or villainy. Another positive for the series is the fantastic cinematography. North of North is filled to the absolute brim with gorgeous and creative shots of the Arctic, showing the reality of living amongst the ice is much more beautiful than anyone could imagine, which we also are reminded of by the constant remarks made by characters about the gorgeous scenery, and they should be talking about it because it is absolutely beautiful. Genuinely, I'm terrified of the cold as a good Latin American, but I mean, I would love to just fuck around in the Arctic. And it is indeed gorgeous. Throughout the series, we are shown how beautiful the cold Arctic can be, even if it is dangerous, especially because it is dangerous. There's a mixture of beauty and treachery and the untouched wilderness of the Arctic, protected only by those who truly appreciate it and understand it. Two things which stand out as quintessential for the series are the focus on indigenous culture through dialogue and, most importantly, through costuming. The storytelling embedded in the costume design of the series is perhaps the most eye-catching, but we also see and hear the characters converse about their culture in a way that is both natural and requires no further explanation, making the approach flow easier and without feeling exploitative or overly stiff. One time we do get an explanation of cultural background is during the baseball episode, when we are treated to a little YouTube video with the information necessary to understand the specific rules that are being played by. But even the video comes with such ease and naturality that it would be difficult for any viewer to question its presence in the episode. Even if it may seem like at first a deviation from a previously established narrative, the entire series' humor is so human and its way of approaching its content with the same seriousness or lack thereof that we approach life, that the video may come out of nowhere, but it fits right in with the other more outlandish shenanigans that we witness. As for the costuming, of course, CIS takes center stage, but all the Inuit characters are so well explained through their costuming. It does genuinely sell the idea that this is just how they dress, instead of giving the impression that the costume designers were fighting each other for who can catch the viewer's eyes the most, as if they need to trick the viewers into believing that the series is good based solely on how elaborate the costume is, which is a feeling that I got with the most recent season of Bridgerton, as well as the aggressively 80s choices that were made in the latter seasons of Stranger Things. A beautiful positive equally comes from learning that all of the costumes in the series, yes, all of the costumes in the series, are a product of slow fashion, carefully crafted by hand by Inuit designers and dressmakers, full of love, culture, tradition, and magnificent color. According to the costume designers Deborah Hansen and Nux Liddell, focused on local Inuit designers to source their clothing, shoes, and jewelry worn by the characters. It was really important to us that our parkas and anything traditional were made here in Nunavut by Inuit artists, said Aglok MacDonald. They had to go to the ends of the Arctic to fashion the magnificent costumes that people will see on screen, which are unlike anything that's ever been seen before. And she is so correct to say this, because it is unlike anything that's been seen before. Like, I certainly have not seen this much elaborate design in one series in a long time, and it is so passionate and specific, and it fits so well within the narrative of the series. I don't think we have ever seen this amount of indigenous culture in one series before, and I just think that's so beautiful. And although her entire wardrobe is incredibly enviable, Siaya's earrings, oh my god, are likely some of the best piece of character design in contemporary television. I'm not joking. They are vibrant, they're full of life, they tell the story of not only our main character, but of her birth, of her community, and her family. The Inuit designs are colorful and fun, and she seems to match her earrings to her clothing, revealing a fashion-forward creative spark that we see bleed into her work throughout the series. Her clothing is also a form of self-expression, being particularly important as we further witness her husband's verbal and emotional abuse and understand her feelings of living in her husband's shadow, especially as the town considers him, Ting, as the ideal golden boy, and her simply as his wife. We truly see Siaya grow into herself and her own skin as she incorporates color and culture into her wardrobe, taking back the confidence and the acceptance that her husband took away from her all those years ago. And speaking of characters, although they will be hard to summarize, the entire cast shines in their personal roles and brings to life a vast array of diverse indigenous characters never before seen on screen. Anna Lambe, who grew up in the town of Iqaluit, where the series was shot, noted, "People constantly came up to hug me and say how proud they were of me and how exciting this was for Nunavut, for Inuit and Indigenous film and television. I wouldn't have wanted to film it anywhere else because the outpouring of love and support we received was so empowering." Empowerment that which her character also received throughout the series, finding out who she truly is and realizing what can be changed and improved, as well as what she's capable of, and touching on one of the main philosophies of the series, the anxiety with which young people live, believing it is too late. There's no longer any time and it is impossible to start over. Through Siaya, whose lived experience is befitting a much older woman, having to first care for her mother through her alcoholism, then care for her husband and child, all while not being even 30, we see that reinventing ourselves is an integral part of life and living, and we must not allow our past experiences or pain to dictate how we live and create our future. Vision. Oh, that's fun. Oops. It's a warm and fuzzy lesson many people my age and even younger need to learn in this day and age, where it seems that your own vision of success can only hit you at the ripe age of 20, and then never again. On a different note, more than the costuming and the cinematography, the fluidity of the acting in the series is truly mesmerizing. Through Anna Lambe's Siaya, we see and understand facets of the human condition not quite so easy to portray or represent, and that would only flow so well in a series like North of North. More than just representing her culture, Lambe helps to beautifully bring to life the power of community and the beauty of being someone who can understand others and wholeheartedly care about their needs. Siaya demonstrates time and time again that she is genuinely joy incarnate, a bright sunlight illuminating those around her, the warmth that may be missing in the Arctic burning inside of her. She can truly become one of the most inspiring contemporary representations of womanhood. She's kind, empathetic, smart, creative, and most importantly, so self-aware. Not only a portrayal of the modern Inuk woman, as she puts it, but of the type of womanhood humanity has depended on for survival since the beginning of time. Truly surprised me how much the series has endeared itself to me. It's very much out of my comfort zone, as I have watched the odd sitcom every now and then, but nothing this recent, and I do believe that some of its charm comes from the ability to capture the best parts of classic sitcoms, but the rest is all up to the amount of passion and dedication the viewer can see bleeding from the screen, making the series a true labor of love. And it is this thoroughly human portrayal of womanhood in life and community that brings me to the only aspect of the series that I am not sure whether I enjoyed or not. Ting. Ting is Siaya's now ex-husband. They met in high school, got married the second they graduated, and had a daughter together, Bun. Ting is also the town's golden boy, being a hunter like his father, his late father that is, and being seen as the model Inuk man. In one scene, during a fight with her mother, Siaya admits she married Ting straight out of high school as a means of escaping her home life and not needing to be there to care for her alcoholic mother. But it comes as no surprise that she ends up caring for her husband and daughter in nearly the same way throughout her marriage, making her stuck in a cycle of living for others while watching her own self disappear. It's unclear whether Ting knowingly uses her weaknesses to exploit her, or whether his exploiting comes from his need to feel superior due to his own insecurities and trauma related to the loss of his father. However, in the beginning, it seemed to me that there was a disconnect between what we're watching as the audience and what the characters could see and how they reacted to Ting's treatment of Siaya, as he is very much verbally abusive and controlling, with Siaya even mentioning in the early episodes that she didn't go to parties a lot since she graduated because her husband wanted her all to himself, speaking to a much deeper controlling side as that we witnessed throughout the series. In the first episode, Siaya falls overboard during a seal hunt and nearly drowns in the cold waters of the Arctic, being rescued by her husband and brought to shore. And while he parades in the glory of his act of bravery and saving his wife's life, when they are alone, he belittles her for making him look like a fool and a bad hunter, stating that she humiliated him. This sort of behavior is repeated throughout the series. He constantly tells Siaya she would never find anyone better than him, that she's incapable. And when Siaya confronts him with the promise he made of allowing her to go back to work once their daughter was old enough, he surprises her by revealing that he agreed to adopt his cousin's baby without telling her, with the explicit understanding here that she would be the one to raise this child that she never asked for. These insults seem to only happen at first when they are alone, but they soon escalate to happening in front of witnesses, like their daughter or Siaya's mother, driving the viewer particularly insane since Nevi, Siaya's mother, is constantly insisting on their staying together and warns Siaya that being a single mother is a lonely life, going as far as punishing her for asking for help with Nevi's granddaughter in a bitter, spiteful scene that screams, "Because nobody helped me, I'm not gonna help you." These scenes serve to remind the viewer that Siaya is above repeating the cycle of violence she was raised in, but also highlight how brave the main character is for choosing to build and care for her community, even if they have done nothing but diminish her and her mother due to her being the daughter of an unmarried woman. But Siaya is human, and particularly emotional due to her precarious childhood. Therefore, she's very easy to manipulate, and by the last couple of episodes, Ting has realized this is a way that he can win her back, seemingly having changed by acting like the perfect family man that she always wanted him to be. Listening to her, getting her gifts, telling her she can work, only to hide her phone once he spots a text from Cook, the adorable love interest, showing her his ways have not changed. This is what leaves me puzzled, honestly. Siaya doesn't go into detail about her married life to her friends, hiding the more harsh comments and criticisms her husband makes towards her, which insinuates she understands that these are bad behaviors. But even when these things happen in front of others, no one is willing to call a spade and label this man an abuser, which becomes increasingly frustrating to watch, until I realized that okay, maybe this is the goal, right? The realization that didn't make it any less frustrating to watch, but it did at least give me a slight sliver of hope, okay? Siaya comes from a highly conservative and traditional tiny, small community. She's been ostracized for not being particularly bright or successful, told to hide behind her husband, and suffer the consequences of having a mother that didn't conform to what's viewed as a well-adjusted woman, having a husband, a home to care for, kids in that order. Of course, those around her, particularly older people, will not recognize Ting's behavior as abusive, and even those who do might not wish to point out said behavior as abusive, since it is none of their business what happens between a married couple. But the series still wishes the audience to be aware of how much of a facade Ting's behavior is, and hopefully because said behavior will further be explored and exposed in the upcoming season, if there is to be one, which I'm pretty sure the series was renewed for a second season, but again, Netflix is murky. They do things and say things that sometimes they do not mean. One bit of dialogue that changed my mind about the intention behind Ting's characterization, particularly when he's around others, comes near near the end of the season. Episode 7, Lost and Found, where Siaya considers the idea of getting back together with Tang after he seems changed during his recovery from injuries he sustained while lost in the depths of the Arctic during a hunting trip. Her friends point out that it took her 7 years to leave him, but only a few days to go back, bringing up a known fact about abuse victims and how it takes, on average, 7 attempts for a victim to fully leave their abuser. This seems like confirmation of the series' awareness in regards to Ting's treatment of his wife, as well as showing that some people, while aware of their struggles, might not feel completely comfortable pointing them out due to their environment. An environment that also fostered the series' most interesting and the secondary most important relationship after the one that Siaya has with herself, which is Siaya and her mother. Siaya really juggles the love that she has for her mother, who raised her alone in a community where single motherhood is very frowned upon, with the resentment that she harbors for having her youth stolen by being forced to care for her mother through her substance abuse. They oscillate between loving kindness and understanding and big blowout fights, where it becomes clear Nevi has severe emotional issues and refuses to own up to her failures or indeed acknowledge them out loud, as well as failing to admit when her actions hurt others, with the old excuse of "you're so sensitive, in my time we had even worse and we never complained." Often in use throughout the series, she comes off as a pull yourself up by your own bootstraps type of person, a common character trait in ethnic parents, especially those who've had to fight for survival and refuse to acknowledge that their descendants' battles, although looking different from their own, are still important. Nevi's own character growth will hopefully reach its apex in the upcoming season, but for now, it seems she's starting to recognize her own faults and identifying her need for self-improvement, thanks in no part to her own daughter's fight for independence and acceptance. Her character becomes essential to understanding the world the series is set in, since her life story and experiences mirror those of many indigenous women before her, belonging to a generation that saw the turmoil of the changing times, while also experiencing the pain of the past. Unfortunately, it seems that not much has changed for Indigenous women, a piece of knowledge that has no doubt kept Nevi up at night in fear for both her daughter and her granddaughter. Nevi mentions in one scene that she is a little bit uncomfortable in schools due to the history regarding residential schools, the last of which closed in 1997, by the way. Meaning there's a big possibility that Nevi herself, as well as people she knows, have fallen victim to the physical, sexual, emotional abuse that occurred in state-funded schools designed to strip Indigenous people off of their culture and drive them away from their family by any means necessary. The topic briefly comes back later in the series when Nevi discovers her own mother, who passed away when she was very young, went to residential school with Elizabeth, the elder, deeply religious and judgmental character who serves as a stand-in for the more conservative side of their community. That scene is particularly fascinating to me because throughout the series we see and acknowledge the fact that Elizabeth is too much. She's too religious, she's too annoying, she's too much in everyone else's business. She doesn't care about her own fucking life. Like, chill. Mind your shit. This is not your shit. But when you realize that Elizabeth was likely raised in a residential school and furthermore survived in a residential school, you think, what has this woman had to deal with? What has she had to do, to say, to become in order to survive in a residential school? Especially given that Elizabeth must be well into her, 70s? That was a completely different world. That violence that she must have suffered. It's heartbreaking. It's a very difficult scene to process. It's fucking windy in here. Okay, it's fine. In the second part of the series, Nevi became, surprising even myself, one of the most important and indeed one of my favorite characters in the series, not only due to how the show later begins to address her story with the kindness that it needs, showing facets of the woman unknown to anyone, including herself, in a series of events that culminates with Siaya coming to see her mother in a new and more humane light, although forgiveness may not completely be in the picture for them yet. The series also touches through Nevi on a historical form of abuse against Indigenous women that is worryingly prevalent to this very day. the kidnapping of indigenous children from their mothers at birth or during very early childhood, a type of violence which happens in many ways, such as through residential schools, framing parents for abuse or alcoholism, pushing indigenous communities into extreme poverty, then blaming it on them for not being able to provide for their children. But in the series, Nevi confides to have lost her daughter to the child's father, having been kidnapped by the white man in early childhood, and with Nevi never being able to locate her, culminating in her inability to confide in Alistair about the very existence of their daughter, Siaya, and driving him away out of fear of losing yet another child. Of course, part of the fact Nevi and Siaya's relationship interests me so much is due to my own turbulent relationship with my mother, which is something I believe most, if not all, women can understand. The haunting knowledge that our mothers, however good or bad at their roles they might have been, were once defenseless and innocent little girls, stripped away from their own agency and forced into pre-made boxes that didn't fit them, made to become small, hungry, complacent, to forget their dreams and renounce their happiness in service of the most important job they would ever have, regardless of whether or not they wanted it or indeed felt ready for the job. The expectations placed on these women to accept the role that they were supposed to be naturally wired to perform without payment, gratitude, or human rights creates a vicious cycle of little girls being raised by women who hated them, or who traumatized them in order to prevent them from getting hurt as much as they were. The first time that a woman sees her own mother's humanity is when our world truly begins to crack. For recognizing the humanity in a person who gave us life, recognizing the lack of agency and forethought that might have gone into it, brings us into an overwhelming sense of despair, which is impossible to describe to anyone who has not experienced yet. It is heartbreaking. It is hard. It hurts. It really hurts. And I think we can literally see in Siaya's eyes in the last episodes the acknowledgement, the recognition of her mother as a person. But not only as a person, but recognizing her mother as a little girl who's scared and who's hurt and who maybe didn't even want to be a mother at all. The series really speaks to me in ways that I was not ready for. More than just a silly sitcom, North of North is a portrayal of the good still left in humanity and how we can prosper even in environments where it seems impossible. It is beautiful. It's a heartfelt series created with enormous amount of passion and dedication, and I am so happy that I experienced it. Which brings me to my main concern towards North of North. With the current market of streaming websites, combined with the rise of conservatism in Western culture and online bigotry, is Netflix ready not only to further develop the series, but to stand by it when it becomes eventually the target of the everything is woke now mob? Will Netflix understand the gem that they have on their hands and continue to support it? Or is the series doomed to suffer the same fate as other incredible well-made series like The OA or Sense8 or Anne with an E, and get the boot once it doesn't prove to be as profitable or socially acceptable as the corporation wishes it to be? Honestly, we have waited over 10 years for the completion of Stranger Things, which cost Netflix more than the GPD of a small country. I'm not exaggerating, by the way. It genuinely did. Surely we can have a few more years of this wonderful little cozy community in the Arctic, right? Right? Anyway, this was my review of North of North. As always, the script is in my blog, The Kitchen Sinks. You can go visit and read about other things that I have written and other things that I will write. It has been a pleasure. I am so in love with the series. I love the way that it makes me feel. I think it's so rare to find a series, especially nowadays, that it just gives you the will to keep going, and that it supports my never dying idea that humanity is in fact good and that we will be all right. I definitely recommend everyone who watches this to go watch North of North. It is beautiful. It is fun. It's funny. Anna Lambe did such a good job. And I'm not just saying that because I'm gay and in love with her. I'm also saying that because Siaya is a character that speaks to me so deeply. And Nevi is a character that speaks to me so deeply. And I'm so thankful that this exists. And I hope Netflix isn't stupid enough to actually cancel it. Otherwise, I will find them and I will piss on their left shoes, every single one of them. Anyway, bye.